Austin talking about Mexico. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so I'm Maddie, and our first cultural universal that we had were the markets in Mexico. So here in America, our markets, we have large stores like King Soopers and Target and Costco where you can go in and buy everything in one place, like clothes and food. But in Mexico, they have smaller markets like the one you see in this picture, where they're outdoor and there are a lot of small stalls that kind of spill out to the street. And then the local people in Mexico, they provide the things that they sell at these markets. So they'll like make art, or they'll make clothes, or they'll grow food, and then they'll sell it so other local people can go buy it. So it makes the local culture more like a community, because people are buying and selling things that other people in their same community have made. So that's just one of the differences between here and there.
So the next universal culture is language, and so obviously the language of Mexico is Spanish, but the reason why it's a lot different than English is because there's a lot of differences in like the respect. Like if you're taking Spanish, you know, a lot of the ways that you respect your elders in America are thought to be kind of weird. Like when being polite and saying please and thank you, people usually don't do that in Mexico. It's more about calling your elders certain things instead. So that's a big difference, and also it speaks to like the heritage of Mexico, that the language is Spanish, because it was first like colonized by Spain. So it talks a lot about that. And hola is hi, just so you know. So it speaks a lot to the heritage, and that's where a lot of the culture comes from, is from when Mexico was colonized by Spain and France. So.
Okay, so another one is music. So here's a YouTube clip of music. So that's a clip of a mariachi band playing. So it's a traditional example of music in Mexico. But the thing about Mexican music is that it's just compounded upon itself over time. So like drums and percussion has come from the Mayan and Aztec time in the history of Mexico, and then over time the music has compounded and added more and more instruments. So like in this band you can see there's a lot of different instruments, so they just compound upon each other. And then the mariachi band is also used in a lot of festivals and holidays. So different aspects of the culture connect to each other within one large culture.
Okay, so the transportation. So transportation really has a lot to do with like the whole market thing that Maddie was talking about, because it really brings the culture in with each other. So a big part of the culture is having like your family real close to you, and then providing for your community. So since like everyone in the community provides for each other and they kind of sustain themselves, the transportation, you don't really need cars, because you don't really need to travel that far away. Usually the communities are really close-knit together, so there's no real reason to really travel far away. So usually the main transportation used is public transportation to get from like one city to another and back, because other than that you can pretty much ride your bike or walk everywhere. And so because of that, the few cars that there are usually in the big cities.
Another part of the culture in Mexico is their art. So there's a couple examples of art here, but Mexican art also includes, there's hand-carved masks and paintings along with pottery and sculptures. So the art in Mexico is always handcrafted, which really shows that people in this country take pride in what they do, and they want to be able to show that they take pride in what they do, and they make everything by their hands. And another thing is that they're all brightly colored, which is a kind of a theme within Mexico, like the markets and the architecture and the art is all brightly colored. And so then a third thing about the art is that you can see in the skeleton piece right here, it also represents their part of the festival, so that would be in the Day of the Dead. So along with the music, art also plays a large role in the holidays.
So if you guys are starting to catch on, there's really a big connection to Mexico's history and almost all their cultural universals. They all have to do with the Mayans, the Aztecs, the French, and the Spanish, who all lived there previous to the Mexicans. And so a lot of that also comes into play with the holidays. So most of their holidays are religious. They're really based off Catholicism. And so because of that, they have a lot of holidays like we do, like Christmas and stuff like that. But then they also have their government holidays, like we have the 4th of July. They have their Independence Day, and a whole bunch of different types of different holidays based on like battles for their independence and all that good stuff. A lot like we do here. They're just different dates because they represent different things. But a lot of it also, and that's also a big part of their culture. They celebrate holidays a lot. Like we always see like the Cinco de Mayo celebrations and the Day of the Dead celebrations, because they also interplay with like the family aspect in the culture because they all connect to each other.
So architecture is one aspect of Mexican culture that really holds a lot of symbolism. So along with the colors are really vibrant in Mexican culture. But the thing about architecture is that when they build their houses, they build them from a central square and then they build out. And their houses face in as to symbolically represent the protection of the family. So their residences also have a lot of times walls around them. And it shows that like it's keeping outside influences out from harming the family who's living inside. So it shows that they really value having a close family and protecting their family, and how they want to show that through their architecture, and that's how it comes through in the culture.
Okay, so the education system is similar to it is here in America, but it's also a lot different. So all kids are required to go to primary school, which is basically like elementary school. So that's exactly the same as here in America, but the difference is once they get to high school, which they call secondary school, it's a lot different because only about half the kids, like 64% of the kids, end up going to high school. And usually that's divided by social classes. The richer kids will go on with their education, but the poorer kids will go off to work to support their family. And so, and then also through high school, about half the kids, there's a 42% graduation rate from high school, whereas in America we have a 75% one. So that's a lot different, and like I said, a lot of that's due to the social class barrier. And also, only a quarter of the kids that do graduate from secondary school move on to higher education, like in college. Whereas in America, a lot more than that. I forget the statistic, but it's a lot higher rate than a quarter of the kids that go to high school.
So we all know about Mexican food. I'm sure everyone's had Mexican food and you're eating it right now. But the characteristics of Mexican food is that there's a lot of spicy things and there's a lot of corn-based things. So this goes back to the history, as Austin was talking about, that Mexico was settled by the Spanish and also the French. So the Spanish were responsible for bringing in spicy foods and corn-based goods into Mexican cuisine. And then the French were responsible for the baked goods. And then throughout Mexico, the food varies where you are in the country, depending on your geography. So there's going to be different variations of Mexican food throughout Mexico, just because different foods grow in different areas just because of the climate and geography. So the geography plays a big role on the climate, as also as the history of Mexico and who is settling there, depending on what types of food you're going to eat.
Okay, so the family aspect of Mexico is a really big one. So family in Mexico, as we talked about one of the first couple of days of class, they all stay really close to each other, which is a lot different than here in America. In America, once you're 18, your parents say they're kicking you out of the house, you leave, you go off to college or find your own job. And so everybody kind of disperses. And then, we have family reunions and things like those where we all come back. But in Mexico, a lot of times everybody really lives real close to each other. Like I was saying, the real tight-knit communities, usually entire families live in those. So as you can see, this is an enormous family of probably 3 or 4 generations, and they all stick together. And they have reunions too, like if they have moved away, they all come back together, but they all stay close to each other. And also a big difference in here in America. In America we have lots of divorces, and that's not really a big deal here. If your parents are divorced, it's just kind of a normal thing. But in Mexico, they have a really low divorce rate because it's kind of you're not respected if your parents are divorced, or if you've had a divorce, you're really not respected. So that's why a lot of times people have like combined names in Mexico, and that's usually due to their parents getting divorced. So if you have a last name that's combined, like hyphenated, then usually you're disrespected by a lot of people, because of the culture really looks down on divorce, because a lot of it's based on Catholicism too.
So those are a couple of Mexican cultural universals. You can see they all kind of connect and they're interwoven in between each other. That creates the giant culture that is Mexican culture.